what is the current state of knowledge on how changes to forest-related property rights affect people's poverty? And so this was a really vital question. And we first did a systematic map, a map of all of the evidence on forest poverty relationships. Property rights are an enforceable claim to use, manage, or otherwise benefit from a resource. Property right really matters for forest users and people with those rights because it defines what they can actually do and how they can benefit from a given forest resource. This can have effects on poverty, for example, and well-being, but also long-term environmental sustainability. Across the evidence that we examined, we found generally positive or mixed impacts on the effect of forest-related property rights interventions on poverty. Greater devolution of property rights to communities and forest landowners is the main implication of the research. We caution, however, that newly devolved property rights to communities and forest landowners need to be careful to monitor the forest resource so that forests are able to continue to deliver benefits and that they're not overexploited based on a new set of property rights. The other caution is that the devolution of property rights to communities should not mean that additional burdens fall on marginalized. So women, elderly, children, minority communities that might be given additional responsibilities, but not necessarily provided with the resources they need to succeed in taking advantage of these new property rights. Equity plays a very important role in mediating the relationship between forest-related property rights and then their ultimate outcomes on poverty. So in some cases we saw the property rights change led to increases in income, but those increases were concentrated and captured by elites within a community rather than being more evenly distributed. By strengthening property rights, communities, private landowners will have an incentive to manage the resource, in this case a forest. For example, by having secure, clear property rights, a given community member or household could harvest resources from the forest and then sell them to make money, and in that way maybe send their kids to school and eventually move out of poverty. We found that many of the interventions only had to do with allowing communities the right to either access or withdraw resources. Forest-related intervention design should include efforts to help develop the capacity of communities to take more advantage of the newfound rights that they might have through trainings and other mechanisms. The evidence identified a number of specific pathways through which forest-related property rights might affect poverty outcomes. Some of those include direct harvesting of forest resources like timber or non-timber forest products, and then selling those resources. A very interesting finding about pathways out of poverty relates to strengthening of trust within communities. So when communities are given rights, for example, to management or to exclude other people from using the resource from outside the community, that builds trust and it can form a strong foundation for better collective action to manage community resources and forest resources over time, which in turn can lead to better forest outcomes, including potentially poverty alleviation. Our results hold particular relevance in the context of global negotiations around the problem of climate change and biodiversity loss, as well as the UN Sustainable Development Goals for 2030. They suggest that greater devolution of rights to local communities around the world holds promise for enhancing their well-being and helping to reach some of these larger social goals.